Spider-Man Brand New Day is in production, and what better way to celebrate than a new animation, baby? The reception for the swing has been absolutely incredible. So to thank you guys, and because a few people have asked, first things first, we need a model. So I asked MattBTW for his incredible Spider-Man model, gave it a rig along with some tweaks like procedural wrinkles. I then imported a scan of New York City using the BLOCKBUSTER add-on just as a base for the animation. I also made sure to choose a specific street I wanted to model, which in this case was the street right outside Radio City Hall, mainly because I wanted to model this open area. I then reconsumed a lot of Spidey media just to get some ideas for the swing. TASM 2 is obviously always the blueprint, and I knew I wanted a fun little twist motion after watching this shot from Spectacular Spider-Man. Threw Spidey into the scene and just got to work, blocking his movements through the environment and spline and adjusting in the graph editor later. And just like that, we have the first draft of the animation, which I think is pretty okay. There is a lot wrong here that was thankfully pointed out by some very talented animators: sharp surder and toxic animations, weak silhouettes and posing, incorrect pivot points, unmotivated camera movements, and poor animation timing, all leading it to feel generally amateur. So I redid everything. Here's the newer second draft. In this version, you can see throughout that almost all of the poses read much better, and the camera is actually motivated by Spider-Man's movements. Spidey also rotates from his hand rather than torso, preventing it looking like flying rather than swinging. His limbs also now move inconsistently, making him feel more human. I would make small changes to the animation throughout later, but the structure of this draft generally stayed the same. Now, it's time to handle the lighting and the environment. For this scene, I have a global light source coming from a HDRI, which stands for a High Dynamic Range Image. HDRIs are basically several photographs taken with different exposure levels that have been combined into one file, which allows you to digitally light a scene realistically. But because we're lighting a city, it's such a large environment that it simply lacks ambient light from the sky. To fix this, I have an additional sun lamp set to a very high angle to prevent harsh shadows, creating a nice blue fill light. To show the difference, here's a before and after.
Love will yield to business. What the fuck?
Now for probably the most time-consuming part of the process, modeling these buildings. Now, some of you smart folk may ask, Nero, why don't you just use building assets and create your own street instead of basing it on a real one in New York? Yes, I agree that is something that you can do with it still looking good. Here are examples from other talented creators.
But for this swing specifically, you see so much in the environment around Spider-Man. Having it be based on something actually real just makes it much more believable.
It's like the difference between drawing something from memory and drawing something with reference. So I started out the scene by creating the streets, following the layout from the New York scan I already had, creating a custom procedural sidewalk and road texture based on what's actually there on the streets in New York, and then filling the streets up with assets that I got from Sketchfab, BlenderKit, and the CityGen add-on files. For the buildings themselves, I start off with a basic cube, which I loop cut and extrude the hell out of to recreate the basic silhouette. Also going back to the Google Maps Street View for more reference. I then throw a building texture from textures.com onto the cube that's close enough to what's there in real life, color correct it a little bit, and then extrude it according to the texture and my own reference. Repeat this process throughout the city, assign new textures here and there, and scatter some kit bash assets, and then boom, and it's done! Feel free to take shortcuts. I actively only did sides of the building that only be seen from the camera. For buildings in the background, I use kit bash assets that look close enough to the buildings there in real life, along with CityGen assets for glass buildings since they have less of a need for specificity. For buildings even further back, I just used the New York scan. Now for the webs. Add some temporary ones in just to animate with, which is really important for pivot reference, but I'm replacing them with fully animated ones, which I use the Anim All add-on for. It gives you the ability to animate curves. Then, a super simple geonode setup to scatter some icospheres on the web to add some more detail. Shout out to Max Arnhammer for the suggestion. Throw in traffic and fog, and now we're ready for... Let's speed this up. I added some lenser, anamorphic lens flares, lens distortion, lens dispersion, and some extra bloom inhalation. Some additional smoke puffs for the web shooters, a color grade, and it wraps it all up. Woo! That was a lot of work covered in under 10 seconds. But the animation's done. Now before I show the final product, I also just wanted to reiterate that I really genuinely appreciate the insane reception that this swing has gotten. It means the world to me, so again, thank you. Thank you again for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Make sure to comment below if you have any ideas for future projects you want me to take on or whatever. And yeah, click on the videos. They're there. Watch the 4K version. It's on the top right. Go do that.